said, because they say that those warnings, those alerts didn't go out in time, and they also say that people could have been saved. What do you say to those families?
Well, I think everyone did an incredible job under the circumstances. This was, I guess Christie said, a 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000 years. And I just have admiration for the job that everybody did. There was just admiration. The only a bad person would ask a question like that, to be honest with you. I don't know who you are, but only a very evil person would ask a question like that. I think this has been heroism. This has been incredible, really, the job you've all done. It's easy to sit back and say, oh, what could have happened here or there, you know. Maybe we could have done something differently. This was a thing that has never happened before.
He doesn't sound great, huh? He's so sensitive. Yeah, but he used to be better about it. Like, he used to be a lot better at responding to any perceived insult. He's done this so many times now. Anytime a reporter asks him a question that's even slightly challenging, he's like, you're evil. Only a terrible human being would say something like that to me. And he always sounds so tired. By the way, the raking over the coals that's being referred to there by the CBS Texas reporter is the fact that for some reason, Kristi Noem, again, for some reason, delayed the FEMA response to the floods for 72 hours. 3 days after a flood. I mean, 3 years at that. It might as well do 3 years at that point. For what purpose? There is no... Honestly, I just think it's incompetence. Like, I don't think there's an underlying motive to it, really. I just think she's stupid and they're bad at their job. Look at this. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is facing calls to resign for enacting disaster relief reforms, which officials say hobbled FEMA at the crucial moment after the Texas floods. Sources inside FEMA told multiple U.S. media outlets that new policies, including one that requires Noem, Homeland Security Secretary, a member of the presidential cabinet, to personally sign off on any spending request over $100,000. Unbelievable. Member of the presidential cabinet. There's no other authority below her that can do this. If she's asleep, if she's on holiday, and if she's just busy doing ketamine, and I don't think it was planned at all. I think that I genuinely think this number was set. Both in like a the buck stops here, we're gonna save the money kind of way, and also in a stop spending money on stupid bullshit kind of way. We're doing Doge, we're cutting the government. You know, that's evil, sure. But the 72-hour delay, I just think she's stupid. How does MAGA benefit at all from delaying a response they're going to engage in anyway when the harm was immediately known? Just stupidity. Search and rescue teams specially trained to respond to catastrophic floods couldn't be deployed in case the... Like, to understand how stupid this is, there are contingencies in case the president is incapacitated during a nuclear emergency. Like, for every level of governance in the executive, there's meant to be multiple fail-safes. For the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Jesus Christ. What if she goes on a bender and anything happens in the country? What if there's a terrorist attack? Far be it for me. I'm not one of those people to fearmonger over 9/11 too, you know? But like, if one did happen and she was drunk, that would be that. Like, nothing you could... What would you do? Search and rescue teams specially trained to respond to catastrophic floods couldn't be deployed in case of the devastating Texas flood until Kristi Noem personally gave her stamp of approval, which didn't come until more than 72 hours after the flooding began. My honest guess, she just forgot. There's just a complete communications breakdown in the White House. Nobody's getting information to anyone on time. Like, people are missing each other's numbers, their phones, just on every structural level, things are breaking down. And at some point, somebody was like, Noem, you have to sign this. And she was like, oh, shit. And she ran and signed it. Floods? That can happen? Demon-occupied government? Demons would be more competent, I feel. When I think of a demon, or like a devil, I guess, I think of, you know, like they're like doing like a trickster thing, you know what I mean? You have to be clever to pull that off. Anyway, in addition to, this is kind of unrelated to Trump and Kristi Noem, but apparently Camp Mystic, that Christian girls' summer camp that got swept away by the floodwaters, apparently they were building sleeping dorms in the floodway. Like, not little cabins by the water to watch the river, but they built where people sleep in the floodway. Not the floodplains, the floodway. So I hope there are some lawsuits. Because, like, that to me, like, the people responsible for these decisions should be, like, financially obliterated. Possibly criminally obliterated as well. That's pretty bad. It's illegal in most states. Texas has no such regulations. They might become illegal. It might become illegal in Texas. Like this might be bad enough. It gets Texas offers a steep discount on mortgage and construction costs if you willingly choose to build in the path of floods. So they do it. I don't know why the fuck I live in this country. Honestly, I genuinely don't know why I live. I feel like I'm deliberately nerfing myself. I could I could be anywhere else. You were born here? Yeah, I guess. 19 cabins located in designated flood zones, including some in an area the county had deemed as extremely hazardous. Also, the county literally turned down funds for flood early warning systems to get an own on the Biden administration. Reconstruction can't come soon enough, man. I genuinely have no sympathy for the Trump supporters in the area that perished or who know people who perished, because like you literally voted for this. I don't know how obvious I don't know how often you have to run headlong into the wall over and over and over and over again, okay? You're voting for pro-death people. I'm sorry, what the f am I supposed to do with this? And they get angry for pointing that out. Yeah, that, okay? Seriously, I'm so fucking tired of this dynamic where the buffoonery of liberals is like a spectacle for us all to enjoy, as it should be, by the way. But the feelings of people who vote to have themselves shot in the balls over and over again are meant to be coddled and respected. Like, we're supposed to be sympathetic to these things. The only reason they're having these these moments of regret is because they're the ones being flooded and not us, okay? The Christian extremists who are sending their little girls to this camp, I bet you it's majority Christian extremists. It's a little Christian summer camp, okay? It's Texas, all right? If a flood hit the neighborhood where I live in, or hit New York City, whatever the fuck else, they'd be like, yeah, God's punishing the homosexuals. You, and your feelings, dude. The only reason you give a shit is because we're not the ones getting hurt. When fires happen in a blue state, they don't give a. When floods happen in a blue state, they don't give a. LA fires, they don't give a shit. Floods in New York City a couple years back, they don't give a shit. They never, ever, ever give a shit. They're openly contemptuous. They do not care. That is true of some, not all. Yeah, and for the some to whom this doesn't apply, obviously they're not in the line of fire. Yeah, if you're not a Trump supporter and you're affected by this, yeah, then obviously this doesn't apply to you. But like this charity is never extended bidirectionally, ever. They don't have empathy. They don't even care about themselves. Being weaponized outwardly entirely. They are not evil on purpose. For one, I think that's bullshit. They are literally going out and laughing at the suffering of the unfortunate. The MAGA movement is not doing harm because they have a honest misunderstanding about the way the world works. Like, for Reaganomics, there are a lot of people who just don't understand how the economy works and who genuinely think that capitalist accumulation benefits everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's bullshit. But I don't blame the average person for not understanding how economics works. Like, that is difficult. It's a difficult subject, okay? We're in a time where the current president campaigned on deporting 20 million people, and his followers are drooling and cheering and like their veins bulging from their necks, celebrating as they see videos of ununiformed masked ICE agents brutalizing honest, non-criminal people. Like, just regular ass people. Like, come the on. No, they are pro-evil. They are knowingly pro-evil. So many white people voted to destroy the New Deal just so the blacks can't use it. It's been like this, like always. Like every white person who suffers in West Virginia does so in large part because either they or their immediate ancestors supported a political movement that deprived them of economic well-being because they were told black people benefited from it too. Sorry, my sympathy is limited, okay? If they can't express sympathy for people dying in floods and wildfires because they're Democrats, then why the should I be sympathetic to them when they're causing the floods and the wildfires and supporting and cheering when it happens to other people? And we have to bend down and get sympathetic and prostrate ourselves before them because it happened to them that time. I'm not falling for this bullshit anymore. All of this, have sympathy for the misled working class of the red states. Shit, it's been a psyop from the beginning. But 6 years ago, when Camp Mystic pursued a $5 million construction project to overhaul and expand its private, for-profit Christian camp, no effort was made to relocate the most at-risk cabins away from the river. Instead, local officials authorized the construction of new cabins in another part of the camp, including some that also lie in a designated flood risk area. Around the country, construction is highly discouraged in river floodways, where deep and fast-moving waters are expected to travel during flood events. She said it was particularly problematic to build a camp that houses children in an area so susceptible to flooding. Well, I voted to have my arm put in the grinder. Why is my arm being put in the grinder? No, it'd be more like they voted for your arm to be put in the grinder, but because they didn't understand the fine print, they sit there laughing for 6 months at you while your arm gets melted away, and then their arm gets put in the grinder, and they're like, what the dude, this is serious now. I was earnestly misled. I didn't understand what the consequences of my vote were. Also, I probably wouldn't change my vote if I went back in time, but like, feel bad for me. I don't feel bad for you. I didn't vote for this. Yes, you did. Well, you voted for it to happen to other people. That's all they want, dude. That's all conservatives ever want, is for you to feel bad for them. They're so pathetic. The entire thing is built on victimhood culture and grievances, you know? The entire culture, like always, Christians are being persecuted. Whites are being persecuted over and over. It's the same rhetoric every time. Whenever a bad thing happens to us, we have to tank it. Whenever a bad thing happens to gays, blacks, Asian, it doesn't matter. Like any demographic that isn't the right, and it's just jokes to them, you know? But the moment anything happens to them, we all have to come together in a moment of solidarity and prayer. Everyone has to care. I don't care. You did this. Measles cases hit 33-year high. Yeah, and you know what? You look at the stories of this happening and you get the interviews of the parents of children who have measles, and wow, what a surprise. They're all fucking Trump supporters. Not all. There are people who have like immunocompromised kids, of course, but I'm not angry at them, you know? Like, you're just killing your own kids. I agree with what you're saying, but how do you reconcile this with the idea that if progressives/Democrats had a strong populist left message, that many former Trump supporters would support it? They should just be stigmatized. They should feel ashamed of what they did. Like, for one, listen, okay? If Republican voters cared about strong populist working class policies, they wouldn't like Trump, okay? We are not talking about an earnest, noble, savage group of people with strong principles who are merely like the heartland hasn't been reached. We're talking about overwhelmingly stupid bigots. Like, don't pretend we live in a different world, right? The lefty, the Twitter lefty who thinks we live in the world where like every member of the working class, every Appalachian coal miner, every like electrician working around Dearborn or whatever, they're all these like salt of the earth, earnest people who are just looking for God's honest chance. No, they're not. Stop. Like, why would you say that? What evidence are you basing that opinion of yours on? No, they're not. They're overwhelmingly big. They're bigoted. They're not intelligent because they're not educated. And they consistently vote against every single thing we believe in, okay? There are people who like Trump who also like Bernie because they see Bernie and Trump as both being authentic people. These people are stupid, and they don't like Bernie for his progressive policies. They like him for superficial aesthetic reasons. Clearly, they don't actually care about sincerity because they also like Trump, who is not sincere, or not sincere in the way that matters, I suppose. He's, I guess, sincerely dementia-addled. So you just have to deal with the fact that you're dealing with dumb cattle here, okay? And every socialist movement has had this point. You have to recognize, like, no, the peasantry, the stupid, unwashed, uneducated goat that live in the hills are not, in fact, somehow, are not ideologically in line with a movement that has and always has, not just recently, but always been predominantly made up of young college students. You just have to accept that. And we could build a better world, but we're not going to get there if we keep stumbling over this hurdle. We keep getting tricked into thinking that the real way to win like a broad majority consensus is by appealing to the instincts of people who are unintelligent and hate everything we stand for, even if it would be better for them. Liberation to these is having a nicer car than their neighbor. They don't give a about the blacks in the coastal city. They don't care about Jews. They just like the fact that Israel bombs Arabs. You give them money, they would build more parking lots. What if we forced everyone to live half their time in cities? Yeah, you're describing a kind of reverse Pol Pot, which I unironically support. Thank you. Yeah, I've been pretty like radicalized in that direction. Yeah, you will work. You will be a barista. Yeah. No, I'm here for it. Not specifically about Republicans, but about poor people. Here's the vote share by income in New York City. Yeah. Poor people voted more for Cuomo in the Democratic primary than even like the wealthy $250,000 people. Sorry, education and income correlate. Uneducated people, generally speaking, are our enemy. You are more likely to get inroads with suburban wine moms with a bachelor's degree than you are to go to a place with a median household income of $42,000 and convince them that socialism will fix their problems. Maybe we should actually educate these poor people then? That would be great. Join PV, go and try. Unfortunately, in reality, People, especially uneducated, stupid people, are stubborn. And if you reach a person when they're 45, they're probably not going to walk back every position they've had for their entire life because a college student went up to them and explained otherwise. No, what we need is power, social stigma, and a mandate, all right? It's not enough to just appeal to the people who already believe in what we're talking about. You need to make believing the opposite untenable. This is how, by the way, just so you all know, this is how we got people, by and large, to stop dropping the N-bomb in public, okay? After the civil rights movement, day one, all right, you start integrating people. What happens to the Little Rock Nine? They have to be escorted into their school by paratroopers. You think all those screaming whites, the ones who were throwing rocks, the ones who were, like, having a stroke yelling at those little black girls, do you think that they were convinced out of the positions they held? See, nowadays we still have reactionaries, but we don't need Little Rock Nine paratroopers, you know, anymore, for the most part. We've moved on from that era, at least for now. Why? Because we made being that kind of guy socially untenable. You didn't convince them. You go up to the screaming woman behind them who's yelling at troops and little girls and be like, oh, well, have you considered actually that racial science is antiquated? The phrenology is only funny as a meme? It doesn't work. You just have to make them suffer with social stigma until they shut the f up about it. Then you educate their children better than they could ever provide and teach them the opposite of what they would otherwise believe. Public education for everyone. No private education, no homeschooling. Everyone gets the line. Otherwise, civilization ends. And I mean that. We're literally living in a anti-civilization presidential administration right now. Climate change? Who the f cares? Any government competence on any level? Who the f cares? The budget? Boom! Who cares, dude? The debt? Who the f cares? No one cares. And a bunch of idiots are clapping along, you know? Civilization, if you want democracy to be the way we do these things, then the education of the masses, their disposition is literally live or die. It's not a choice anymore. If you want to go to like an autocracy or a monarchy, then sure, you can play around with it. Who cares if only 10% of the population is literate when one guy makes all the decisions anyway? If you want a democracy, this is what matters most. I'm being a little bit too self-righteous and have been for like 25 minutes now. Didn't Marx describe this for the 1848 French Revolution, how Napoleon made himself emperor by allying behind him all the lumpenproll and rural peasants? Yeah, the poor lumpenproll and peasants have been the ally of the reactionary basically always everywhere in all times. I have no idea why these like MLs on Twitter think that rural working class people are the allies of socialists, despite them not being that and consistently being the most aggressive anti-socialists. I have no idea why. I have no clue where this came about. It's noble savage bullshit is what it is. It's people with college degrees on the coasts who don't like the fact, they're insecure about the fact that their populist messaging appeals predominantly to people who are in the educational elite. So they lie to themselves and they pretend that if they just drove around northern Idaho, they would find kinship in all of these goat f***ers, or I guess sheep f***ers. It's not too hilly up there. Is it? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it is. Why was the Democratic Party the party of the poor until recently for so long? Because the New Deal primarily benefited whites. The Great Depression was so bad that it united everyone under an economically populist social democratic Keynesian model. But the New Deal, Roosevelt, had to make compromises because he didn't want blacks to benefit too much. Because that was a no-go for a lot of Americans. Literally, that's it. These fucks only accepted something that made their lives better because they were that desperate and because concessions were made to keep it out of the hands of black people. And then they voted to take it away piece by piece as it was made more equitable. Carved out exceptions for sharecroppers and domestic workers. Oh, not to mention the fact that the GI Bill didn't get all the black folk a nice suburban house. It was the only thing that animates them is racism and grievance, okay? We have to stop pretending otherwise. You meet a lot of people from rural areas? Yes, actually, because when I was growing up for years and years, every summer I would go over to Florida and I met with lots and lots of people. Also, you know, I grew up in LA. There are tons of poor people there. Or do you mean rural? Wait, did they say rural poor or just poor? Let me check the dono. No, rural areas. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Not so much nowadays because I live in Seattle. Florida's not rural. It's a whole state, nuts. Where in Florida? The Panhandle. Yeah, ew, exactly. Too much doomerism, how do we reach them? I just told you. You have to socially stigmatize all of the behavior that they engage in. That's literally it. Like, rural Americans are the most entitled, insufferable people in the universe. Nobody else even comes close. Every bad thing that happens to them has to be a national tragedy. Every bad thing that happens to a city, well, that's a learning lesson. They're coddled relentlessly. Have you seen what a presidential campaign looks like? Why the f do you think presidents spend so much time LARPing as like allies of the common rural man? They're literally like privileged in terms of the electoral college. Their votes count many times more than my vote does. How do you do it and get elected though? You can. I'm describing electorally successful strategies. Why do you think shaming rural Americans would be electorally damaging to people who don't get votes from rural Americans anyway? Like, the Republicans shit talk cities all the time. The Republicans talk about how LA's a shithole, New York City's a shithole. Why are there no consequences for them? Because if you live in New York City, your life has meaning and you shrug it off. Meanwhile, if you live in Ohio and someone shit talks your ass rural community where all the jobs are gone and the population dwindles every single time there's a census, you're like, this is my whole personality. I have to pretend I like it here, even though all of my children have left. And those cities shifted, right, Lamau? True, yeah. Trump shit-talked New York City, and he got like plus 10 points there relative to the last election. So, yeah, I love it here. Anyway, time for my daily fentanyl overdose. Yeah, literally. Yeah, it's doing great over there. I think it would be more important for Dems to incorporate populism than to shit-talk rural areas, no? Do both. Most people live in urban areas. You just do both. Also, if you're rural, like, you can be ashamed of it. It's fine. You can still vote Democrat. Again, why the f do we have to be the responsible ones when they're the ones voting for mass death? I don't get it. I'm just talking about being mean to people who are evil. Why the f do they get to be evil and mean? And then you just have to work around them. I don't think that's true. I think that's bullshit. Trump spent an entire 2 presidential cycles threatening to deport Latin people, and then Latin people voted more for him. Like, I don't think that it pans out. I don't think it works that way. Man, this shit right here is exactly why things never get better, lol. No. You're buying the rural propaganda, and I mean that. Every single time this discourse plays out, the Democratic majority coddles the rural populations that hate them and would lynch them if they came into their cities. Okay? Stop with the coddling. We could have moved on by now if it wasn't for all the hatred demonstrated towards rural Americans. Dog, not nearly enough hatred is demonstrated towards these people. This doesn't work. Bosh, I'm from the rural South, my guy. So are my lesbian partners, lol. Yeah, what are you trying to prove with that? Do you really think that, like, the response you can offer to this is so shallow? Like, oh, did you know that gay people are in the South? What the f are you talking about? What point are you making? My anti-vax mother pulled my siblings out of school so they didn't become a socialist like me. Guess who came begging for my help after spending a month taking care of the kids with measles? Jesus. Does being irresponsible hurt democracy, though? Trump manipulates folks with his rage bait and the post-truth thing where he means every brown person but me, but isn't it necessarily destructive to democracy? No. How is it destructive to democracy to stigmatize people for being evil? Remember, we're not going after the ruroids because they live away from cities. We're going after them because as a voting bloc, they're evil. Like, they voted to kill us. You know that, right? I don't know. Do you forget? Do you forget what they want? They support infinite suffering as long as it doesn't touch them. It's so funny how whenever we talk about rural people, the people who agree most strongly are left-leaning rural people. Dude, literally every time in chat, and on Twitter, by the way, every single time, where people who live in coastal cities are like, dude, you can't just talk down to the earnest, noble proletariat like that. And people who live in rural Alabama are like, send the missiles. Please, God, get me out of here. As a rural American, I agree, this sucks. Why do you say coastal cities? Because big populations, both seaboards, you know. Why do you think rural New England is democratic, especially Vermont? I think there's a lot that goes into that. I think a lot of it has to do with the construction of the towns there, the fact that they're kind of like a bulwark of education, the fact that they didn't develop into like massive sprawling plantation like landscapes the way a lot of the South did. The wealth there, there's a lot that goes into that, yeah. Though we don't really think of like rural Vermont, we're thinking more like small town Vermont when we talk about this. And New England is lovely, you know. New England is a lovely part of the country if you can stand the humidity during the summer. And I think that, yeah, a lot of it has to do with like economic disparities and educational attainment. Is small town no longer considered rural? Well, rural refers more to the shape of your skull. Because there are towns with large populations that I would consider rural. It really has more to do with the way they're structured, I think. True, high Quaker presence in New England. That's true. Rural Mississippi is such shit, so many Dems would be shell-shocked. I do wish we should go slumming, man. We should do a poverty tour. But instead of going to Harlem like the elite whites used to or whatever, we need to just drive through, like, I guess most of rural America would do it. I don't know. When I think rural America, like, parentheses bad, I think Idaho. You go through it and you're like, holy shit. It's crazy. Rural Kentucky's so bad too. I mean, it's most of America, like, you know, land area wise. Anyway, trust me, the best thing that we could do for these people is to be honest about the situation they're in, the lives they live, and what they believe, because that honesty will serve us immensely in making their lives better. To be fair, if rural voters aren't going to listen to Democratic politicians and candidates, I don't think they'll listen to us shaming them either. You don't understand the purpose of shame. The purpose isn't to change their minds. A lot of these people are lost causes. The purpose is to make it socially untenable to be anything like these people. Make it uncool. Stop with this fake, noble, savage, earnest proletarian in the Midwest bullshit, okay? It should be embarrassing to look like those people and to talk like those people. And if you make that stigmatized enough, like they really do have to effectively go back in the closet, the point of shaming them isn't to change their mind, it's to keep other people from running in that direction. Look at how many young people there are who support Trump that did this performative, like, Midwestern workwear shift in their aesthetic. Look at the mustaches. Look at the mullets. Look at the Carhartt. Everyone wants to look like they're like a contract worker. Look at Tucker Carlson with his fake-ass woodworking studio. Look at, yeah, the way Matt Walsh dresses sometimes, or Ben Shapiro, you know? There is an effort to imitate the perceived authenticity of, you know, rural, countryside, earnest conservative living. And I think that the more you stigmatize everything around this, the more likely it is that people don't fall for it. Can we not stigmatize Carhartt, please? You don't have to stigmatize Carhartt, but you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Don't be dumb. You know exactly what I'm talking about. As a rural Texan, I grew up like casual conversation with shit-talking Democrat cities. Yeah, they do it all the time.